once again. This is Nuance. I'm Mike Scala, joined, as always, by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip-hop MC and the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
Oh, nothing much, man. Just, again, it's a cold morning. That time of year is coming. So you can see I got the hoodie and the jacket on. Actually, I was just out, so I was just returning home. So, yeah.
Early morning walk?
Something like that. I've been doing a little bit of early morning things recently. I taught a Qigong class the other day, an early morning Qigong class out in the park. I don't think there's enough time to do it again this year because it was a little chilly.
Okay. Yeah, the leaves are definitely turning here in New York, although I gotta say it was nice out earlier today.
Yeah, afternoon gets to be nice. So
yeah, so getting a ton of messages, all this breaking news here, which I guess we can get into in a bit. We've got some guests, at least one guest who should be joining us soon. We were talking about the elections coming up. Actually, early voting has begun in New York. I voted early already, but election day is a week from today, officially. And so we'll see how things turn out. Next Tuesday, we could have a whole different landscape around the country or in New York, or possibly not. We'll get into that. I did want to start off by mentioning a mysterious message that I received. Let me pull this up here, because it was someone claiming to be a psychic medium. Now, the message was tile work, Tilework, tile work. And when I inquired about it, they said, your first love, music. I'm a psychic medium. Listen to more music. I am a writer. I prefer to write. Sometimes speaking cryptic is easier than saying, hey, I'm a psychic. I can give you free help. We are live. Feel me. So apparently, and then they said, remember the name. So apparently if I listen to more music, the name tile work will come up. I'm not sure what that's getting at.
Something will be revealed to you.
Very odd. I hope you weren't the one behind this, Jay.
I cannot confirm nor deny.
Tile work.
Can't confirm nor deny that had anything to do with me.
Maybe that's a Wheel of Fortune clue. Maybe I got to get my Vanna White on, turn these tiles around.
Or Jeopardy. What is... Yeah. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe in like 5 years, something's going to happen and you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm here doing tile work while rapping. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, right. I was trying to figure out how those things could possibly be related. I mean, what I got out of it was if I listen to more music, it will reveal itself to me in some way, shape, or form. But tile work, right? That's an odd thing.
Yeah, why not just outright say what it was that you saw or whatever it was? Just be clear about it.
All right, we're going to have to discuss this Eric Ulrich thing in a minute because I'm as we speak, I'm getting a ton of messages from all different people about it, just so you guys know. That's why I'm looking at my phone. I'm being bombarded with messages on this breaking story. We'll get to it. But why don't we keep on this tile work topic, Jay? Have you ever been hit up by anyone claiming to be a psychic or anything like that?
Not a psychic. I did get, I've gotten some strange comments. Actually on the Let Freedom Ring video, I had some kind of a weird comment, something about the powers that be are watching you or something like that. And then I noticed on Twitter, someone had put me in the name of a Twitter group called The End Times. But the first word in that was, I think, a biblical word. And I don't remember how it goes. It was something beginning with an E, in the scroll or something like that. I don't know.
Well, on the Let Freedom Ring video, I could see that comment because that kind of relates to the content of the song, doesn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was just still a weird comment. I mean, it wasn't really Yeah.
Well, this was unsolicited. I didn't go out seeking a psychic, but like I said, I got this message from someone claiming to be one, saying tile work.
Might have got, you might have got a free reading there.
Yeah. Or maybe it's an attempt to sell their services. Maybe they go around selling that phrase to everybody. Could you imagine that? That's their scam or their hustle, I should say. Tile work to everybody. And then people get so intrigued, they're like, I've got to pay this person to find out what they're talking about.
That's possible too.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyone out there, have you any experiences with this kind of thing? I know some people just don't believe in it or just, they're against it outright.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Anyway, earlier today, I did have an interview with the New York Times, which I thought was good. It was about the Queen's Link issue. And recently on social media, I mentioned that local media outlets have been covering the topic. And, we did the big rally this month. We got good coverage in The Wave, the Rockaway Times, the Queen's Chronicle, Queen's Gazette, a bunch of local papers. So it was good to have the New York Times reach out and want to do a story on it. They're covering the larger issue of what's happening with the right of way, right? The mayor announced $3.5 million for the park. You've got the rail advocates on the other side. What's going on? So it's going to be, I guess, a big story about the whole thing, everything happening with it. And they wanted to get our point of view. So they did a nice photo shoot. They got me looking all stern by the tracks. I thought it was a good interview. I was kind of hoping that we would have had people representing our group who were daily commuters on the subway. I'm fortunate enough to be an attorney and I work from home most of the time. I've got a car even, which unfortunately is really necessary in this part of town, but we'll see. We'll see. You get every time I do the New York Times, I want to make sure the story comes out just right because it's the New York Times. I remember last time there was a New York Times story, I had campaign consultants calling them, making sure they got everything right. It's the New York Times. We want to make sure that things aren't misrepresented or people don't get a false perception of a story. So,
Absolutely.
I do sometimes think about that. Like, man, maybe it would have been better to have someone representing the Queen's Link who actually rides the subway every day and can tell them about their woes, as opposed to me, who's maybe, not exactly in that position, but nonetheless would benefit from it. And also, and this is kind of the point I was trying to make, it would benefit the whole community. It would benefit all of South Queens, it would benefit all of New York City. So it wasn't about me, but, sometimes they try to make things more personal and kind of give that personal touch. So that was the only thing, right. me being an overthinker and thinking, oh man, that would have made it all perfect. But, I did what I could to represent our side and talk about how this is needed. And hopefully it turns out to be a good article.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. I think with media, you want to try to be careful how they, you never know how they're going to run with it later when they go through and edit it, what parts they're going to keep, what they're going to cut out, like what direction they're trying to push the narrative in, instead of just taking what was said. It's like there's a certain idea that goes into behind the story. Right. I think I remember when I used to do a lot of interviews, music interviews. And I remember asking people what would they prefer, if it was written down or if it was just the raw of it. More people preferred to see the raw interviews, just all of it. And maybe that's, because they didn't want any slant or whatever. I don't know, but maybe people just wanted to make sure, like all of their words got out, so it wasn't out of their control as to what was presented. Because it's easy to take things out of context or even just cherry pick things, right? Oh yeah, with text, definitely. Yeah, because you can say something verbally, and there's tone and emphasis that change the meaning a little bit, whereas in text, you have to infer it from either your own biases or from what's written around it, and things can be misconstrued. Right. And the reporter, I think, was very interested in the issue and really wanted to cover it fairly. I do think it would be a great article. But, you just have, at least me, because I've been around this world, not just media, but, politics and everything. You start to look at things critically or maybe even overthink things. But I think you need to do that to a certain extent in this field. Right. But, you start to think about, all right, like the reporter was asking, do I live in an apartment or a house? That came up. I'm thinking, all right, but what is going to be the relevance of that in the article? It's going to be like, oh, here's a guy who lives in a nice house and drives a nice car. He's a lawyer and he's the one fighting for this train. Like that spin could be put on it if they wanted to make us look bad, which I don't think they want to do. But you start to think about all these different things, right? Right. But I think it sounds like it's it was a good experience, and it could be beneficial for the fight, and bringing some light on what's going on, and bringing that to a wider readership or wider viewership.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really been our objective with this. We said that too much of this decision has been happening behind closed doors. Let's bring this to the public. Let's put it more in the public spotlight. I even mentioned to the reporter when I ran my campaign in 2017 and even in 2021, the Rockaway Beach Line, Queensrail, Queenslink, that was really a major component of the campaign. And that was about bringing it to the people and giving the people really the option to vote on it, right? If I'm carrying this issue to the ballot, then in effect, they have the choice to vote for it because they know that if I get elected, I'm going to fight for that issue. So it's like, let's put it to the people. Let's ask the people. Let's notify the people that this is what we're fighting for. See what they think. Let's get their input. Let's see what they want to do with it. Right. She asked me even, why did you choose to make that such a focal point of your campaigns? And I said, because it's really about South Queens being cut off from the rest of the city. So it's not only about transportation, and it's not only about leisure. It would be nice to get to the beach faster. That's not what this is about. This is about economic development. This is about infrastructure. This is about opportunities. This is about all of these things. South Queens gets the short end of the stick because we're so disconnected, and there's no north-south connectivity to the rest of the borough and to the rest of the city. Even our airport, JFK, we've talked about this. JFK is in Southeast Queens. Why is New York City the only major city in the country with no direct link from its airport to the center of the city? In our case, Midtown Manhattan. How much is that costing us in economic development or even revenues, direct revenues every year? And so we're really shooting ourselves in the foot by not having this line. And it is coming to the detriment of us in South Queens, especially. And that's why I make it an issue. I mean, this is not happening in a vacuum. You improve transportation, and you do this in particular, you're improving the economy. You're improving infrastructure, healthcare options. You're improving even public safety to a certain extent. I know someone once on Twitter kind of called me out for saying, how could you tie transportation to public safety? Because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. This is about prosperity overall. If you improve economic development and opportunity, you're going to have a more prosperous city, and that's going to affect public safety and crime. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So all of it. I think that's kind of one problem is when people try to deal with these issues in a vacuum. Because then it's going to be kind of half measures because you're only focused on one point of it instead of seeing that, okay, there are different things that are connected to this that also contribute to whatever it is that we're trying to work towards. So that's like in the comments, we got someone answering the question, the title question, what is your major issue? And they said straight out crime, watching a revolving door where criminals go in and out. And then I responded that we shouldn't have that revolving door in government. So it looks like it's going to be one of the biggest issues, or at least the first response that we did here. So, so I do want to get to that in a second. I just got a message here. Let's see. Paul says you got to mention the Ulrich thing. Apparently, people are coming.
Apparently, we apparently do. Paul Trust just sent a group message about the Queens Gazette doing a piece called "Transit Equity Starts with Queens Link." So they're coming out in favor of the Queens Link. So this is good. Like we said, we're getting a lot of coverage, a lot of attention on the issue, and I believe we are seeing what I said we would see, which is you present this issue to the public, to the masses, and most people are going to say transit makes the most sense here. We're not against parks. We can build a beautiful park, but how are we even going to get to that park without transportation? I mean, that really takes precedence here, and we need to make sure that's preserved. Absolutely, absolutely. What is this? Could I unpack? Jose wants me to unpack what I mean by we shouldn't have a revolving door in government. I mean, it's been talked about before where you get people that work in private industry and then go into government over areas where they were working in, or vice versa, people that were in these government positions and then go into private industry into executive positions in the field where they were previously supposed to be regulating. And so you get a lot of handshaking and things that go on. Personally, I don't think you should be able to
to work in private industry, going from the government into something that you were regulating previously. I think the people lose out in that regard, and there's a potential for too much corruption in there.
Right. So when you say a revolving door, you're talking about going from government to that private industry, back maybe even back into government.
Yeah, any of that stuff. Yeah, we saw that a lot with no one talks about a lot these days, but like with Monsanto, and there were people going from the corporate to the government positions, like at the FDA, and then the FDA head went to become the head of Monsanto, and like there's no way to actually accurately enforce the regulations that we're supposed to be doing on for food safety if you've got that conflict of interest, that handshaking going on.
Yeah, that's why they have rules in place, like after you leave Congress, you can't lobby for a certain amount of time and that kind of stuff.
There should be. I think there should be. I don't know if there are.
There are those kinds of rules, but they're probably not strong enough.
Right. I don't think, if you're in Congress, you shouldn't be, being able to do that after, because you've got intimate knowledge of different things. You've got those connections. You can push something that maybe you were previously supposed to be regulating. And I think the people.
Well, Andre's here. I'm sure he's got plenty of thoughts on this. What's going on, Andre?
Andre's got plenty of thoughts on everything.
As always.
No, but yeah, I was going to make a quick point about, I understand leaving Congress, let's say, to go into lobbying, the conflict that's inherent there. And they do have rules. I think it's
No. So the thing is this, it was always proposed. I don't actually believe there are current rules on the books that prevent you and preclude you from becoming a lobbyist immediately leaving office. Okay. Yeah. So presidents of both parties have promised to do this. Famously, Trump said that there should be either a 5 or 10 year moratorium to clean up the swamp. Right. But, again, I feel like DC got a lot more swamp filled, during his tenure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Maybe a state rule. I could have sworn I saw some kind of rule, but I didn't think it was very long. But my point, though, also was, let's say you were previously a lobbyist, it becomes trickier to say you can't run for office, because in theory, that's supposed to be up to the people to decide whether you should be voted in or not. And of course, the system doesn't work that cleanly, and that's a problem. But to make that a law becomes
I actually don't think that should be the case. I think that if you were previously a lobbyist, you can run for office, and your opponents, by that logic, have the right to bring that up before the people and raise that as a central issue against you in the campaign. But nobody should be precluded based on their previous vocation from running for office. I don't give a fuck if you sold, like bundles of dope or whatever and stuff, or you were a lobbyist for Monsanto. Like, you were a scumbag back in the day. Maybe you've reformed. Maybe you've become a better person.
That's what I mean. I mean, there's still going to be potential issues there, especially because our system isn't as clean as we want it to be. But it's still, in theory, up to the people to decide whom is elected, and so they should just know about it and make that choice.
Right. Sure. In elections, yes. With the Monsanto example I was talking about, basically, he was a C-suite person at Monsanto and went and became the head guy at the FDA. Right. I don't think that should be allowed.
So here's the thing, right? It shouldn't be allowed because people who nominate and then vote on these nominations, or just, straight up set these people up, they should be afraid of the kind of wrath and ire of the people by saying, hey, that person should not fit in that position, et cetera, right? Like, they should be afraid, but at the same time, they're not. You know what I mean? I don't think that you should necessarily not allow somebody because there's a conflict based on their previous position. But I will say this, that, you should be afraid to nominate somebody like Betsy DeVos for to head up the Department of Education, for example. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that are antithetical to the things that you've done in the past, and you're now in a position where you're very blatantly there to destroy it or upend it in some way, right? Like, or at least stall it to such a degree that, the entire enterprise becomes futile.
Right. And in theory, what they would say is, someone's appointed to run a certain agency or department. you don't like that, it's really up to the person who appointed them. And so if you don't like those decisions that they're making, the people they're putting in those spots, you could vote against them next time. That's kind of how the system, and it's supposed to work on paper, at least. I mean, you see that even in court cases where someone makes a decision, political, or maybe it's a political appointee making a decision and you're arguing with it, you don't think it's equitable or it's fair or should even be legal. Oftentimes a judge will say it's really a political question, and if you don't like it, vote for a new mayor next time, or a new governor, or whoever it is.
In theory, it sounds good, but I think in practice, some of those things can be a little bit more complicated.
I mean, look, take this for example, right? So for me, I thought that the thing that precluded Brett Kavanaugh from becoming a Supreme Court justice is his inability for any sort of bipartisanship or impartiality regarding judicial review. Right? It wasn't the thing that happened with Dr. Blasey Ford, who I very stridently believe. I definitely believe that happened. But I do understand, you know what I mean, the conservative position in trying to defend him. But the problem is that he was part of this like gang of elves, as they were called, who found all the dirt on, you know, supposed dirt, by the way, right? Like, we're not even talking about the things that have veracity. They never brought in the Juanita Broderick stuff. They didn't bring up a lot of the stuff, but they just found, you know, Whitewater stuff. Oh, and I forgot the name of the longtime friend that committed suicide. That was, you know,
you're talking about the Clintons, though. Right? He was Bill Clinton.
Yeah. So he was the guy that was working under the recently deceased what's his name?
Starr?
Ken Starr. And so he was finding all the information and stuff for that impeachment trial. And like, you know, I don't know. I guess you can also say that technically Ruth Bader Ginsburg worked on the Nixon impeachment in theory, right? So like, but at the same time, I don't know. I just thought that his just kind of vitriolic bile against anybody with a D in front of their name, like that probably shouldn't allow you to become somebody who's supposed to be impartial in a lot of these things. You know what I mean?
I agree.
With the administration of the court. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Right. Well, I always say also that when it comes to voting for president, you really have to look at the Supreme Court, because, you know, presidents can leave office after 4 years or 8 years at the most, in theory, right? But the Supreme Court can last for generations. Their appointees could be on there for 20 years or more, 30 years, 40 years. So that's really important. Some people overlook that and they think, oh, we want to shake things up with the other party. Let's try something new. Let's go in this direction. They don't realize that it's not a temporary office because of the Supreme Court. They could do lasting damage or have a lasting effect on the country.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got Trump appointees that are going to be there for, you know, next 20, 30 years. So his influence is not going away, even if he does.
Right.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about elections. We titled this video Election Day Preview, what issue matters most to you. So thank you to everyone for tuning in and commenting. I know we got crime already on the list and people have their own thoughts on this. We do need to mention the Eric Ulrich thing, because honestly, as we were coming on here, as I was going live, I got about 5 or 6 text messages about it.
Look at the smile on Andrey's face.
And it's still going on. So yeah, I mean, I'm only reporting what I know, you know, and it's probably what everyone else knows who's been looking at this. There was a probe. Apparently there was a search warrant for his phone because of some kind of gambling investigation. And now the latest is that he is set to turn himself in, I guess, to be arrested tomorrow as a result of whatever they found via this probe.
All right.
So that's what I know. You know, I know nothing more than anyone else at this point, but it is breaking news. It is something I guess everyone's talking about locally. Like I said, my phone is blowing up over it. So there you go.
I'm sure there's going to be more and more coming out the next couple of days, multiple articles and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I did see a New York Times piece about it, but this was before the turning himself in part broke. This was just about the probe of his phone, but they tied it to Eric Adams because he does currently serve as the commissioner of the Department of Buildings. And so they were saying that the mayor has a history, I guess, of appointing troubled people, kind of similar to what we were just talking about in some ways, right? The mayor's appointees, and they're criticizing him for the people that he's chosen to put in some of these jobs.
Right.
I'm sure it's going to take, a week before people start making conspiracy theories out of this. And, Eric couldn't have done anything wrong possibly and stuff. It's all progressive conspiracy against them, a bunch of a cabal of Democrats trying to get a good man arrested.
Yeah, that's kind of
we will see
these days.
But yeah, by the way, so I knew we were doing an election episode. I don't know what you guys were going to talk about, but at any point, I do have a lot of interesting recent polling for a couple of races that I've been looking at. And I kind of recently made my rounds of contributing, my peddly little like $25 to a couple of Senate races, that I care about and congressional things.
Okay, yeah, so let's get into that. I do want to start off by talking about the governor's race here in New York. I know all three of us watched the debate between Governor Hochul and Lee Zeldin, so we can get into our thoughts on that. I also have new polling on that race as well.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a poll that came out. Well, apparently, this is what I was told. A bunch of people was told. I'm not sure if there was actual reporting on this, but the word was that there was an internal poll that Kathy Hochul's campaign conducted that had her down by 1 point. But there is a new poll that I saw now from Pix 11 showing Hochul 52%, Zeldin 44%, 3% undecided. And when the undecided voters were pressed to make a choice, Hochul's lead increased to 54% to 45%. So that's more promising for the governor, but honestly, still close, too close for comfort, and it's at the point where it wouldn't be entirely surprising if either candidate won, which is not usually the case in New York.
So, I mean, look, I'll say this. The two most recent polls are from The Hill and Emerson, which is, more or less a bipartisan poll. And then the Trafalgar Group, which is a more right-leaning poll. It's, some of the things that they own are like the Daily Wire, for example, right?
Mm.
So the Trafalgar poll has them tied. The Hill Emerson poll that just came out from the 28th through the 31st has her up by 9, 54
That's
to 40.
the poll that I mentioned. It's also the Pix 11 poll.
Okay. So, yeah. So, the overall average across the month, because I'm looking at Real Clear Politics, is 49.8 to 45. So she's up by nearly 5%. And I will say this, looking at all the polling that I am going to share with you guys, that is some of the most hopeful polling that I have seen in a lot of these tight races.
You said it's
shouldn't
more
be that
hopeful
tight,
polling?
It's
Within the margin of error.
Yeah, I'm saying it's one of the most hopeful. And I mean, look, I will put into account, right, that like it would be crazy for New York to have a Republican governor again. Having said that, look, it is interesting. It's, I think you and I, Mike, talked about this, man, but like Lee Zeldin, there's this like angry George Costanza thing going on and stuff that might appeal to a lot of voters. Like the dude is quick on his feet. He's feisty. He's a little angry and stuff about everything. There's a lot of people who also feel feisty and angry about things. And I'm sure that, Nassau and Suffolk are going to go kind of heavy and stuff for this guy. And, it's going to be.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are definitely a few concerns there. Number one, again, people like to talk about shaking things up. Maybe they're concerned about public safety, and they should be. But if that's the way that they want to go, just because they think he's going to be tougher on crime for whatever that means, they may not be considering the other implications of that, like trying to get anything through the legislature. If we still have a Democratic legislature, we're trying to get these things done. Like I had some meetings this past week about some bills we might want to write and introduce. With the Republican governor, that becomes a lot more complicated. And people need to start thinking about actually how government is set up and what the effects of some of these things are. I think sometimes people think of these decisions almost symbolically, like, hey, we're going to shake things up. We're going to do this. We're going to try this. We're going to go this way. Not really thinking about what can happen as a result with the implications.
Right.
People don't think about that. That's not in their purview. It's how the person sounds to them. They're not thinking about, what you were just talking about there. And so like he, watch the debate. I mean, I think he's going to be more appealing to a lot of people than how she came off. Even though he was crazy, and didn't really speak on anything, it's how he spoke and what he delivered, and right. I think that's going to be much more appealing. And I think to me, it's kind of a problem the Democrats tend to have. Not that it's a problem that it's wrong. It's just that Democrats are more measured and oftentimes, and like the examples that you just said. Well, there are these processes in place, and this and this and that, and people aren't thinking about that. They're like, oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I want that. And so to take that measured approach, speaking to the people I don't think it translates all the time.
The thing is this, I think that there's a difference, right? That so take somebody like Obama, who's been making the rounds, right, for all of these close races, right? And when you hear the man speak, his tone is also very, very measured. His thoughts, his everything about it. But he's also capable of going off the cuff and being very charismatic. There is that cult of personality still retained that you really need to kind of win these seats. And it's unfortunate, right? Because I do think that Kathy Hochul probably is a policy wonk to a certain degree. But during that debate, at least for the first, I would say at least third of it, all of her responses seemed like they were focus tested. All of them were specifically like, hey, we just did a prep like an hour and a half ago and stuff. This is exactly what you said. Now repeat.
Right.
And
the point on guns, she kept repeating, well, you can't address public safety unless you're going to talk about guns. But she didn't seem capable of getting off of that point either.
And that's I think in that debate, I think that hurt her, because even if they were on a different topic, she kept saying that. It's like, it's not applicable right now. He's talking about something else. Can you address that? Can you speak on to that? And it was just, that was a little frustrating.
And look, across the board throughout the country and stuff, and a lot of the races that there's a lot of money in on the Republican side, they've made it a point to make as little debates as possible for their candidates, right? And out of a lot of them, like I watched the Tim Ryan, J.D. Vance debate in Ohio. I watched the Pennsylvania Senate debate. I watched the Florida Senate debate. I watched a lot of them, right? Having said that, the one major winner out of these small number of debates I saw really was Lee Zeldin, because he only needed to hit a home run and during one game, really. And it seems like he had a decent at bat this time around.
Well, we're joined by Salvatore Lopizzo. Sal, are you with us? So your video was on a second ago. Sal, he's a Rockaway guy. I know he runs Yana. You're Not Alone, does some great work with the veterans. And I know he's going to have some thoughts. Well, Sal, when you can get back to us, we'll jump in here. Definitely we'll get your thoughts on this election and the elections in general next week.
All right. And look, I'm not saying that Hochul was wrong. Her points were right. They were well thought out. She was, even tempered in delivering them. It's just that it's a little, one, it's not exciting. Not that it should have to be, but unfortunately people are looking for that. Personally, I would think, her approach sounded better, but it's just not exciting. It doesn't sell well. It's not flashy.
It doesn't feel like an appropriate response because people are fired up right now, and so they want the candidate to sound fired up. And I think she could have benefited from having more passion, even if she was making those same points, make them in a more passionate way, in a way that makes you sound like you're just as fed up as the people are.
Right. And I think sometimes Democrats tend to talk like they're above it. And so that can kind of sound a certain way to people listening. It reminds me of the Dukakis debate, right? When he was asked about the death penalty, which I never personally, and I was a little kid watching that. I didn't think that was that bad of an answer, but I understand it, right? I understand the psychology behind that, why some people thought that made him look weak. What was the answer? Well, he was against the death penalty. So they said, what if it was your wife? What if your wife was
they said, what if it was your daughter? Right? Was it, I thought it was, they said daughter.
I think it was his wife. I think it was his wife. What if she was raped and murdered? Would you still be against the death penalty? Which is kind of a gotcha question, right? They were trying to catch him on that. But he held his ground and he said, yes. He said, I'm against the death penalty in all cases.
But the thing was, right, this is a question that has reverberated amongst debate prep for Democrats for fucking forever afterwards, right? And it was the fact that he kind of stumbled. He gave a very wonkish, and it was a dispassionate answer. That was the problem, right? That was a very dispassionate on policy answer. And what everybody said, listen, they say, I would want to kill this motherfucker with my own bare hands. But thank God we have laws that prevent us from doing that, and me being the judge and and jury and executioner of all these things.
Right. Right. And that's really my point, right? Like, Kathy Hochul could have democratic policies and talk about all the work that she's doing and all, but she should sound more passionate in the way she delivers it. Even maybe before talking about the policy, talk about the emotion a little bit. Try to relate to people before just speaking on dry policy. Right.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's important. And like Andrey was talking about with Obama, he has that personable aura about him. He can make that connection. I mean, in the middle of his speeches, like he even take the time to address like a heckler off the cuff, and it's a
you saw the fine stuff? Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. But I think that's also, I mean, it's hilarious, but it's also an important thing, and it makes people comfortable with you, and they're more willing to listen when you're speaking. Not only does he have good things to say and he has a great delivery, but he's also got that personable nature to him where people can get addressed in that reference. He caught that, and I'm sure he went home later and he was feeling himself a little bit. Michelle was probably like, just shut up. He's like, no, but did you hear her? She said I was fine.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I mean, look, the most important thing, it makes you sound human, right? Which is what Mike's example is really about, right? That like a human being can respond with a wonkish answer about their wife being potentially killed. They want a human being to respond like, I love my wife, I would kill for her, da 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 da. Yeah, so, I think that, look, I think a lot of Democratic candidates really need to figure that out. They need to figure out how to actually sound passionate about very real issues that are very dire and of very dire importance right now. You know what I mean? This is going to be one of the most important midterms in my generation and in a lot of people's lifetimes. And I'm unfortunately seeing a much smaller turnout that we saw in 2020 already, right? In terms of early voting.
Right.
So,
Lixa in the chat says, I've been out of the city and most lawns outside of New York City or for Zeldin. Yeah, I mean, but that's what you see with the Republican candidates. They seem to want to bombard every place with signs, but signs don't vote, as Bill Clinton famously said. It is concerning, but I agree. Like when I'm on the road and I see a ton of Zeldins, I haven't seen one Kathy Hochul sign, but obviously you can't. Yeah. She can get more votes than her sign proportion.
But I mean, look, by the same token, I see a van constantly rolling around the Rockaways over here and stuff with the congressional candidate that's running here on behalf of the GOP. I'm not trying to promote nobody and stuff, but I still think Greg Meeks is going to win and is going to win handily and stuff.
Oh yeah,
so,
I actually questioned that before because I see those in Rockaway. I was out in Ozone Park before. They're all over Ozone Park as well. I mean, they're really going hard with these signs and these banners. And I wonder what the purpose of that is, especially in a district that is so heavily Democratic. Talking about the congressional district, you're not going to win that as a Republican. What are you really trying to do? Is it a way to get Democrats to spend their resources? Maybe think, we should put some money into this so they're not going to be spent in swing districts.
Throw some money around. You know what I mean? Get your name out there. I mean, there are Republican friendly areas here in this congressional district, and so for whatever that is, I don't know, man, to turn for future business, additional, positions of power amongst various boards and things like that. Yeah. Listen, you know what I mean? There, we just did a race for a library board yesterday, and we had the turnout was crazy, man. So people really care about a lot of these smaller positions, and you know what I mean? You have an unsuccessful run for governor and stuff, you might become head of school board. Who knows? Or rather, unsuccessful run for Congress and stuff. You might,
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people are tired of seeing all these signs and commercials and just being bombarded with political messaging everywhere we turn.
That's election season.
Yeah. So I wanted to look quickly, and this is the Pix 11 Emerson poll. But what I found interesting was the breakdown of people's top issues. And I think we're going to do a similar poll here, just ask people what their top issue is. But on this one, at least, 35% of New York voters said the economy was a top issue. 14% said threats to democracy. 13% said crime. and 11% said abortion access. So if you add the threats to democracy and abortion access, that's 25% of voters statewide, which bodes well for the Democrats, at least that quarter of the electorate. Yeah.
Yeah. It's threats to democracy. It's just crazy that that's even a concern.
Yeah.
300 GOP congressional, senatorial, and gubernatorial candidates do not believe in the results of the 2020 election. Threat to democracy should be number one choice for every single person.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying it's crazy that it's come to that has to be something that is you know, a real thing that we have to look at. Like, if there's one thing that we're supposed to believe in as a country, our marketing materials has democracy written in bold letters on the top. Like, if there's one thing that we're supposed to believe in, it's supposed to be that. And for that to be something that everyone rightfully is concerned about is very crazy.
All right, so let's put the poll out there for the people and they can give us their thoughts. The poll question of the week is, when you go to vote this year, which of the following issues is most important to you? The economy, threats to democracy, crime, or abortion access?
I am betting that a lot of people are going to say crime.
Yes, I agree. Especially in these parts, it is what you hear the most. And you know,
I would like to
last week.
I would like to remind folks that conservative candidates, especially recently and stuff, while they might sound strong on the issue of crime, they always have the same resolution, right? To every hammer, everything is a nail, right? And so, unfortunately, they don't take into consideration any economic elements. You know what I mean? Inflation is high, crime rises.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are things that could be done surrounding the issue of public safety that would make everybody safer. I'm not coming from this like weird progressive spin that, hey, you know, get rid of the prisons and the police and like the patriarchy and then we'll be fine in the utopia. No. I'm talking about just generally like, listen, people make more money. There are better jobs available. We have more access to better jobs. These things also work to reduce crime. Right.
That's exactly the point that I made before you came on, Andrey, when I was interviewed by the New York Times earlier. I said these issues don't occur in a vacuum. So even fighting for transportation, it isn't only about being able to get from point A to point B. Everything we're talking about is affected by that. South Queens is cut off from the rest of the city. And yes, that even trickles down to crime and public safety. It's about prosperity, right? It's about opportunity. It's about economic development. All of these things play in tandem.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
excuse me, guys. Hold on one second.
For sure. Yeah, it's yeah. It looks like in the chat, many people are on the same thing. Crime seems to be the number one point that everyone's sticking to.
Right. But to Andrey's point a second ago, we need candidates who are going to present plans. And the plan can't just be throw more money at it, throw more cops at it. That's a Band-Aid solution, and it's even dubious as to how much of a solution it even really is. You need to be thinking long-term. Yes, there needs to be an appropriate short-term response. Let's never discount that. But to solve the problem, to really have a long-term reduction of crime and improving public safety, you need long-term solutions like dealing with these economic factors, like dealing with mental health outcomes, like, yes, better transportation, better education, better services in the community. You know, I was talking to someone before who said that a lot of these areas, especially in South Queens, suffer from a lack of good quality after school programs, and the kids have nothing to do. You know, they're out on the street causing trouble potentially at that point. And, you know, what if their moms and dads are working 2 or 3 jobs to try to put food on the table? And what if they're commuting to work, you know, hours more than other people because the transportation is so bad? And, you know, they're just struggling. They're struggling more in this part of the city. And of course, the kids are going to suffer from that. And, you know, then you say that there's not good education, no good after school programs to boot. I mean, that's just a recipe for more crime and bad outcomes all around, right?
Right. And you know what I mean? A lot of crimes and in particular violent crimes are being disproportionately committed by, you know, younger and younger people and stuff. It's not, you know what I mean, a bunch of, you know, kids my age and stuff, 35 and stuff, running around like causing ruckus and stuff. It's teenagers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's and a lot of it is without things to do, without, you know what I mean, like And you know what I mean? Their parents are struggling and stuff. A lot of people are struggling. And so that becomes a major issue.
James in the chat says, speaking of transportation, it took me 2 hours to get from 116th Street in Rockaway to Grand Central Terminal today.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I'm assuming he didn't take the ferry.
I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah. Lixos mentioned bail reform, saying that's a big problem, that Hochul didn't give a good response.
So I actually, look, let's talk about bail reform real quick second. The thing is this, it seems like on the left, folks don't want to keep people locked up because of the conditions in prisons. Folks on the right want to keep folks inside, regardless of the conditions inside of jails. Like, why are we not like ever talking about the conditions inside the jails themselves? Right? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Just in terms of, why is it if you are waiting to be processed and literally, like, let's say you're facing a violent felony, right? In which case you should be locked up awaiting trial. Why is it going to take at least a year for your case to be on the books? And then two, why are you, if you're not found guilty as of then, you're literally waiting for your case to be heard, why should you be encumbered in a place of just immense violence, degradation, and constant humiliation? So it's a legit question. Is why, and like, Rikers in particular, this is where we situate folks while they're still waiting for their case to be heard. The correctional officers union, at no point, like, the heads keep going to prison. I don't understand. Like, do we ever like address the conditions inside jail cells ever? And like the people that are supposed to be in charge there, like, ever? Do we no, either close the shit or like just, send them there. Like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? What is this? Can we like ever like address the idea that people could either be mistakenly put there while they're waiting for their case to be decided and stuff? Why should they be facing like horrendous?
Right. And we're violating people's right to a speedy trial, but just by holding them there for so long. I mean, that's bad enough in itself. And then you're saying that when
but I mean, if the conditions there violate,
that's what I'm saying, right? It's bad enough that they're there for a long time, but now you're saying you keep them there for a long time under these unacceptable conditions.
Yeah, man. Like, what are y'all talking about, man? That's crazy.
But I think getting back to the issue of bail reform, though, how should the governor have answered that question or addressed that topic in a more effective way?
Honestly, I think she should have been passionate about human rights and brought about examples of other states that do it quite well. New Jersey is a good system. I think didn't they just have I think they actually literally did just have a whole segment on this on what's it called, on who's that British guy on HBO, man, on his show. Yeah, he just had a whole thing on bail reform and stuff. He brought up New Jersey and stuff in the way that you don't you literally look at the crime on previous incarcerations, whether the person is returned to court for previous court dates and stuff. It's all like a system. There's an algorithm there, and it like takes away anything else. And literally, like, it's a system, and it, more or less works. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying that there are ways to kind of explain things if you're an expert at it, which you should be, given that it's a hot button topic here, and should be able to talk about it passionately as well, right? Like, there should be a way to address people's concern about safety and about people who are potentially violent being released for no reason if they're likely to commit violent acts again. But at the same time, she could also be able to talk about the fact that a lot of times that doesn't happen. A lot of times these things are blown out of proportion by the New York Post, and what I mean,
that's a problem too. Every issue that you see, quite honestly, gets blamed on bail reform right now, even if it has nothing to do with it. I mean, even crimes that were bail reform was not applicable to, even if it's not even a crime necessarily, anything that happens in the world. If you look at the comment section on social media, you can see bail reform.
The former NYPD commissioner, man, went on Fox News, brought up a case and stuff of a guy committing some violent things and stuff. He's like, oh my God, he was out on bail doing this. He wasn't on bail. He wasn't out on bail. None of that was like the case. Right. They're using examples of people committing violent crimes, and they're making a hypothetical thing of like, what if they were on bail?
Yeah.
Look at what bail reform does. Like, no, this is not the case. And he even, when addressing this, he was like, no, there has not been an actual statistical thing that associated with it, where it's like you actually have folks on bail recommitting and stuff crimes while out on bail.
Right.
Like that.
Well, right, and that's the thing. Also, when people talk about they want bail, like they want to make sure that we have bail in every case. Well, bail really means the person is able to get out if they can afford it, at least. But I think people overlook that sometimes, and they think that bail means the person is going to be held in jail indefinitely, when that's not really the purpose of bail.
Correct.
And then it becomes a class issue and a socioeconomic issue in terms of who can afford it and who can't.
Not only that, look, there are valid, conversations to be had about, maybe more progressive district attorneys throughout the country and stuff in terms of their leniency for some things like, petty theft or whatever, right? Like that. I can understand that. And, I would probably argue against that point, the idea that it starts from like a rotten core and then kind of grows and whatever and stuff. I probably would argue against these type of correlations and stuff. But having said that, I can see that point being made. In regards to bail reform, let's just please remember, like, boys and girls, that like if you commit a violent felony, you are not getting bail in New York State. You are not. This has not changed. It does not happen. If you are cited for murder one and stuff, you will not be getting bail. Like, it's not a thing. This is just, it does not happen.
Right. With that said, I do think that there is something to be said for judges having more discretion, especially in the case of someone who is dangerous or really is going to be a flight risk. That's really the underlying purpose here. If we don't think they're going to show up for a trial,
I don't trust judges, man, to have that kind of discretion. I'll be honest with you. I genuinely think that it should be codified, and
we need better judges in that case. I mean,
no. I'm saying, we definitely need better judges. We just talked about the Supreme Court, but the point being is that, hey, guys, like, why don't we actually codify a system that works for you regardless of your ethnic background, socioeconomic background, and everything else, right? Like, I don't want rich people getting off just because they're fucking rich. I don't want, like, somebody who's a poor fucking rapist getting off because, the judge thinks that, oh, poor guy and stuff, he probably, like, just missed his mom and stuff. Like, no, man, like, let's codify.
This is also why people need to pay attention to local elections, including the judge. I mean, it doesn't sound sexy or exciting at all, right? A judge election. But people need to look at that kind of stuff and say that, this judge is not doing the right thing. They're letting people out who shouldn't be out there. They're too lenient, they're too hard, whatever it is, and judge them for that.
But people barely.
Yeah, that at the same time. But I think at the same time, what Andrey is taught is correct, that there should be some kind of a system. So regardless of what judge is there, because you don't know what kind of judge you're gonna get. But if we got a system that they have to work within.
No, I agree with that. There should be guidelines. Like, you have mandatory minimums and maximums, and there's different guidelines that need to be followed. But at the same time, I don't want to handcuff judges to the point where they don't have any discretion, and it's basically a computer deciding it. Because these cases do need to be really evaluated on a case by case basis. At least you have to look at all the different variables at play.
Absolutely. So.
But I think, look, we just need solutions to these issues, and they have to be long-term solutions. And I'm not hearing a whole lot of that right now. And I'm guessing this applies not just to the governor's race, but to a lot of these races that we're seeing. Like, I watched the debate in Pennsylvania for the Senate, which is kind of hard to watch.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of the Florida gubernatorial debate and maybe a couple of others. But
was that the Senate? Wait, is that the Herschel Walker?
No, that's Georgia. That's Georgia. Okay. Pennsylvania is Dr. Oz against John Fetterman.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Now, Andrey, I don't know if you have more recent polling. The most recent polling I saw on that one did have Fetterman above, but it still was prior to that debate. The only post-debate poll I saw there just had voters, I think by a plurality, saying they didn't think Fetterman was fit to serve office given his condition at the debate, but it wasn't a head-to-head who you voting for one. So I don't know if there's any actual Oz versus Fetterman data post-debate that's out there.
I will tell you shortly. Hold on 1 second. Dixon.
I'm missing some of the stuff in the chat. My Facebook is going crazy. It's not updating. I'm seeing. Yeah, I'm going to have to go on.
What's happening in the chat?
There's Yeah, there's activity in the chat, but I wasn't able to see anything going on because for some reason my my Facebook's not updated.
Well, real quick, while Andre looks up the
I have it. I have
okay.
it.
I was just gonna make the point that, you know, in New York, as tight as that race is, a problem we're gonna have potentially is it's going to affect a lot of down ballot races too. And you can see a lot of upsets for Assembly and Senate seats throughout the state. Any concerns there, Andre?
I'm sorry, say that question one more time.
That as close as the governor's race is in New York, let's say even if Hochul does win, a concern for Democrats, I think, is that it is going to have an effect on down ballot races across the state, and it could lead to incumbents or just Democratic candidates in the Assembly and the Senate being upset.
I don't think that we're going to have tremendous upsets, but I would say that if Lee Zeldin does better than folks project, and even if Hochul wins by a couple of percentage points, I do think that a couple of the toss-up races are going to go Republican.
Because I heard, and again, not to be like, you know, this alarmist or anything, but when the word was going around that Hochul was down by 1 point via her internal poll, I also heard that some state legislator incumbents who usually win their races by 30 points were neck and neck with their Republican challengers.
Well, look, I mean, we also saw this. We saw this in the council races last year. You know what I mean? There was a major pickup of Republican seats. I mean, let's be real. I mean, you know what I mean? The city council is still heavily Democratic. The thing is, though, you know what I mean? We just have had such a small amount of Republican seats that now it's more than doubled in the last race. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? Like it, and a lot of it has to do where I think that the GOP in the state has given up on a lot of races. And I think that there's been a weird influx of money into a lot of areas where they previously didn't think that they had a shot. They took another look and they somehow started appealing to a lot of other voters. And so, you know, there are some districts, for example, throughout the city and the state and stuff where, you know, you have a decent amount of conservative voters, moderate voters, and progressive voters. And, you know, if somebody's maybe too progressive, Republicans start thinking they have a shot. You know what I mean? And so that's what it has seemed to be like. You know, I think there was a progressive wave between 2016 and 2018, and now the term has kind of become diluted to such an extent that, you know, if you get up off your couch, you say you're into Che Guevara politics and stuff, you'll be welcomed with open arms by some progressive organization. When, you know, back in my day and stuff, when I used to work for Working Families, for example, and stuff, you know, they had a little bit more discretion and they would actually choose candidates that, you know, wouldn't necessarily just be on their same ideological wavelength, but folks that they thought would actually win and would be decent, would have, you know, be decent public servants.
Be good fits for their districts too.
Well, no, but also just like know what to do as the public servant of a particular job and what have you, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of out the window these days, more and more.
Yeah, no, things have become a lot more tribal and stuff. And, you know, I brought up this library board race and stuff. Conservatives all went in lockstep, you know what I mean? 4 candidates that they didn't have, you know, anything to say, and they didn't have any background experience for any of the jobs that they were running for and stuff. With the Democratic Party and stuff, we seem to continue to infight to such a degree that, you know, if you don't pass a certain test, either, you know, one way or another, right? Like for some people and stuff, you know, for some moderates and stuff, they won't go out for a candidate they seem as too progressive and stuff. There are some Fetterman candidates, right? That is why he's talking about fracking now and stuff. You know what I mean? They were like, oh, he's too progressive.
That was a bad answer.
That guy was with Bernie in 2016. Like, he's too progressive for Pennsylvania. Right. You know what I mean? Like, so what I'm saying is, right, like you might, you know, there are moderate voters that might have issues and stuff, but then there's meaning progressive voters that might have issues, and then the odds, or rather moderate voters that would have issues, and then the other side is progressive voters. You know, if a candidate is too moderate and stuff. Now he talked about fracking and stuff. There's going to be a couple of progressives that are going to be sitting home now.
But it was also the hypocrisy of it and just the inability to articulate an answer as to why he changed his position on that. I thought he was going down the right path in his answer, and he just didn't get there. He basically conceded the point that he was against it.
I honestly, I don't think that he had the actual physical health capacity to execute his answer in the way that he would normally. Yeah. I've been watching John Fetterman for a long time and stuff. You know what I mean? When I organized for Bernie in 2016 and stuff, I've watched him talking about Bernie. You know what I mean? Like he's a very interesting guy. Don't get me wrong. And perhaps over time his positions have shifted. I'm still fairly anti-fracking. I think it's a fascinating technology, but I think that we have plenty of other things nowadays that are ruining the earth. We probably shouldn't add to that.
You know what it reminds me of, Andre? Real quick, it reminds me of Kathy Hochul when she was in Congress being rated an A by the NRA, and now she's running statewide. She has to change that. Fetterman, I think, is doing the same thing with fracking in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Fracking point. I mean, fracking point. Zeldin brought that up in their debate. Like,
the gun issue.
Yeah,
the fracking.
Yeah. Fracking. Zeldin brought up fracking.
Yeah, because he was talking about we need to unlock that natural gas and stuff. He was talking about that was something he wants to do if he gets elected.
Okay.
But he wants to frack upstate.
Wants to frack upstate.
No, I mean he entirely possible. You heard it here first on the Mike Scala podcast, right? Lee Zeldin
It was in the debate.
Well, in the Pennsylvania debate, Jay, that was a major issue because Fetterman was against it before, and now he's for it. And so they asked him about his position changing. And it seemed like initially he was saying that he is still against taking money from their lobby. And that's why he said he was against it, but he's not against it in principle. I thought that's the distinction he was making. Like, you could do it, but I'm not going to take money from them. But he didn't really flesh that answer out. He just kind of left it as, yeah, my position is I'm for it, even though they showed that he was against it before.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. I'm with Andre on it. I think they should stop it.
So anyway, Andre, you did find recent polling, or is there polling posted?
Yes. So I'm just going to give you kind of all of it. And again, now, even polling is skewed because you'll have Republican pollsters and you'll have Democratic pollsters. So as of the most recent poll was done by the Morning Call, they are in an even tie. The poll done by Insider Advantage has Oz up by 3. The New York Times and Siena poll has Fetterman up by 5. The overall average is Fetterman up by 1.2.
Okay. I don't know about that one, Andre.
I'll be honest with you. So, I mean, look, I would think it'd be interesting for us to kind of, to make our predictions. I would predict, man, I don't even know. I want to say Fetterman still wins, but I would not be surprised if Oz wins that race. I think that this is the one that's going to go for like a whole extra day while they count, absentee ballots.
I was going to say the same thing. I think that's going to be close, maybe even too close to call on election night, and it's going to go.
I don't think it's going to get called on election night. I don't think the Pennsylvania Senate debate is going to get called on election night, and I do think that maybe in the early morning of late morning of Wednesday, they'll announce that Fetterman won by like a toe, maybe.
And Oz is challenging the results and calling for recounts and the fun.
Yeah. Here's the thing, man. I think that the Republicans are going to do some interesting things. I could also see Oz losing and then Ron Johnson also losing in Wisconsin to Mandela Barnes, and that being an upset on the left. I see that happening. I also see there being a potential upset in Ohio where J.D. Vance is up by 4 points over Tim Ryan, who I like. And I actually think that in that race, the Ohio race, you're going to hear it from me. I actually think that Ryan is going to pull out, and I think that he's going to beat J.D. Vance, regardless of the poll.
So you don't see this as a big red wave nationally. You think that there are.
I actually think so. I'll be honest with you, man. I actually think that we're going to be maybe a seat or two above where we were in the Senate, but I think we're going to lose the House.
I definitely think Democrats lose the House.
Yeah.
The Senate, I don't know. It's tough. Like and maybe I'm just being pessimistic at this point, but when it's a close race right now, my hopes are not high. I think it may end up tilting Republican, but maybe that's just because I don't expect a lot of these races to be that close in the first place.
But first off, I do think that sadly Herschel Walker is going to win in Georgia. I do believe that to be the case.
And that's so idiotic. How? This dude is barely cognizant of anything.
Could be another thing to blame on Kanye. He just made an endorsement.
Kanye is another. Jesus Christ. That's a whole nother full discussion there. That dude's off.
No, but what I'm saying is he did just endorse Herschel Walker, though, for Senate.
Yeah, and so here's the thing is that does carry weight. Even as crazy as Kanye is, he has a lot of supporters. Even in everything that he's saying, there are a lot of supporters. And some are dismissing how he's saying it, but they're like, yeah, there's still truth to what he's saying. So you people just don't understand what he's talking about. So it can carry some weight.
Yeah, no, dude. I mean, I saw a bunch of those Nazis in California. I'm sure that there are plenty of things that plenty of people that are currently really digging what Kanye has to say.
There are definitely plenty of people. Yeah.
No. But I was just talking about the fact that there were actual skinheads and all these other motherfuckers literally showing the fact that what I mean. There were Kanye fans now in California. Yeah, there's a whole thing. But yeah, man. So it's a crazy time.
Didn't somebody? I think it might have been New York. There was a clip on the internet. Somebody walked into a bar wearing a Nazi uniform as their Halloween costume. I think it was in New York, and they, everyone's reaction was, appropriate. And of course, the person got kicked out. But I think they just did it to be either trolling or I don't know what it was. But
see, that's terrible. Having said that, though, if Mel Brooks did it, it would be very different, right? And that's a producer's reference, by the way, to other folks.
Yeah.
What
was the guy's name? Max Bialystock?
No, Blazing Saddles, right? Is that the end of Blazing Saddles? Yeah, that was the end of Blazing Saddles.
So,
well, crazy times. I don't know. So these are your predictions, Andre. What about the New York race? Did you make a prediction on that one?
I think Hochul wins. I think Ryan wins in Ohio. I think that Rubio wins in Florida. I think that, unfortunately, so I think that Rubio wins in Florida. I think that DeSantis wins in Florida. I think that Kemp is going to keep his seat. I think Stacey's going to lose again. I think that what's his name? I think that Beto is going to lose a third time for governor. So of Texas. Yeah, man. I'm not here to give you guys hope, but I do think that Mandela Barnes is going to beat Ron Johnson. I think that man, and I think honestly, Fetterman is going to squeak this out, and I think that despite the polling, I think Ryan is going to beat J.D. Vance.
I think that one is your most optimistic pick. The Pennsylvania one.
J.D. Vance, by the way, just so we're clear and stuff, the DNC fucked up again and stuff. Is not throwing enough money in that race. J.D. Vance is only up by a margin of error. He's only up by 4 in that fucking race, and he's a little bitch. So just so we're clear, he can definitely. No. Has anybody ever watched? Anybody watch J.D. Vance speak and not thought of that? Even Donald Trump called him a little bitch. Let's stop. I
mean, he calls everybody that, though. Everybody that disagrees.
Yeah, that's not the bar that we're measuring people against. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm not as optimistic in that one, Andre. I do foresee, and we talked about earlier, this alleged psychic hitting me up saying a tile work, whatever that means. But if I'm going to use my psychic abilities, I can see a very tight race in Pennsylvania to the point where we're doing recounts and all these different things. I may need to get out there and join the festivities like I did in Florida in 2018.
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think about the other races? What do you guys think about Ohio, Wisconsin, Florida? I mean, we do have some interesting races.
Honestly, and
Georgia, DeSantis should disappear.
I know. I do think that he will win in Florida. Basically, the same picks you made. I think Beto's going to lose. I think Abrams, unfortunately, will lose again. That's how I see it playing out. Wisconsin, I'm not as optimistic as you there either. New York, even, I'm holding my breath. If you're forcing me to pick, I think maybe Hochul gets it by a very narrow margin, but I wouldn't bet $1 million on that either.
Get out to vote, Democrats, please. Come out and vote. Please, guys, please, 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 please.
That's the problem. They got to get out there and show up. They got to do, Republicans are showing up. They're out in the street talking.
Yeah. Even if you don't particularly like the D on, you know what I mean? Like that you're seeing on the ballot, right? Like, dude, like, come on, guys. It's just.
Also, I'll be real. This needs to be a learning experience, not just for Democrats, but for all candidates and all voters and everyone who's involved in our political system, our democratic system. We need candidates with plans, and we need voters responsive to those plans, rewarding plans, actual plans that are going to work with their votes. And we need to get away from these sound bites and the rhetoric and the scare tactics. We acknowledge that these are major issues. I think on both sides now, we can acknowledge public safety is a very important issue, but how do we address it? And let's not fall for the person who just wants to scare you, or, on either side, the person who just doesn't have any real plan behind them. But what are you going to do?
And I think the candidates need to be able to counter that. Those people that are talking in those scare tactics, to be able to speak to that, because those scare tactics and those flash talking points can be very coercive because they're exciting. They speak to something that's really at the top of people's minds, whether there's any substance behind them or not. They address it for some people, and so to be able to talk through that is what candidates are going to have to, because it's coming. They're going to be like, oh yeah, we need to be tough on crime, so we got to lock everybody up and
but
bail and throw more cops at it. And everyone's like, oh, throw more cops, yay! Lock the bad people up, yay! Like, you have to be able to counter that because it's coming.
But Jay, Hochul knew it was coming too, and I don't think she was well prepared. I mean, she should have been, and she had an answer rehearsed, but she needed to do better.
Yeah, no, she wasn't. She's her delivery and the way she spoke to me sounded very much like Joe Biden speaking. Like her cadence, her wording, it all sounded very much like Joe Biden speaking, but she had even less personality, in my opinion, than that. Because Joe has some personality. He will break that rigid character sometimes, okay, that's hogwash. Like, there's a little bit of personal. There's a little bit of that in there. I don't think she even had that.
She was too measured.
It reminded me of Hillary, honestly. It reminded me of
Hillary is another one. Hillary doesn't have that personality. To me, Hillary has an entitled mindset. I deserve this position because, one, I'm Hillary. Two, I've been here before. You owe this to me. That was my issue with Hillary. With Hochul, I didn't really get that. She just didn't have much personality.
Honestly, and I've mentioned this even before when we were in the primary season, I don't see that fire come from her, and I want to see that from her. I don't see the fire. I don't know why she is there, other than she happened to be in the right place at the right time and got the seat. What does she want to do? What is her legacy? What does she envision her legacy?
What's an interesting question?
What does she stand for?
What's an interesting question, by the way? Let's say that Cuomo had retired and not gone out in a scandal, making her if she actually had to run an election, do you think she would win a primary? I don't think that as
those candidates though.
No. As deputy governor, just running in a primary and stuff, there would be a lot more people running and stuff if she wasn't already currently an incumbent.
Yeah,
and it'd be a much different race.
My question is who?
I don't think she squeaks by in a competitive primary.
You're right. No, you're right. You know why? Because if that didn't play out the way it did, I bet you Tish James would have won that primary.
For sure. And to be fair, I also don't know what Cuomo's people, how they kind of figured out a way to sit her down either, because I'm sure there was some of that as well.
Well, I think also what it was is those unions just automatically went to Hochul's side. Tish didn't see that coming. She thought she was going to get that labor support because she always got it. She didn't see all the unions lining up behind Hochul the way they did. And I don't know what was going on really behind the scenes there, but that did happen. But here's a prediction I'll make. If somehow Lee Zeldin becomes governor in 4 years, Andrew Cuomo will run against him.
Do you think it's going to be Cuomo-Tish as a primary?
Potentially. But he's going to run. I think he's going to run. He's at least going to enter the primary.
But no, well, yeah, dude, of course. I mean, I already know some of the behind the scenes stuff and stuff he wanted in this primary too and stuff. He just didn't feel comfortable enough.
Right. But I think, though, if you have a Republican governor as the incumbent, that's going to make him feel as comfortable as he needs to be to jump in.
Well, and also a lot of the folks that would rally behind him saying, hey, look at what happens. You got a good man out of office for some for some name Pamby, and they're going to do it. They're going to say, hey, he was tough and that's what you need and blah, 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 blah. And that's going to be a problem because I don't really see anybody stopping him with his war chest unless there's a viable and credible and more or less squeaky clean but passionate and charismatic candidate that somehow rises in 4 years.
Yeah, good luck.
Hey, I mean, sounds like you're talking about a ticket of West Walker. I mean, just saying, Kanye West, Herschel Walker sounds like a ticket that you're talking about there.
You know what's interesting to me that that sounds less terrifying somehow still than the planned Trump green ticket in 2024. Because look, I was never one of those guys that was like, yo, 2016, if Trump wins, I'm leaving the country. But like, yo, in 2024, if Trump and Green win, I need to make a ton more money, man, in the next 2 years because I need to be outie for a little bit.
Well, we're about out of time, Andre, but we like to give our guests the last word, so it's perfect for you. We call it the bottom line. Whatever you want to say, whatever you want to leave our listeners and our viewers with. And we thank you all for tuning in, as always. Andrey Bystrov, campaign consultant, political consultant. What is the bottom line?
The bottom line is that Timid here is going to have to find me a nice one-bedroom apartment in Japan in 2024. Let me know any areas that would like a drunken Bulgarian around. And, I'll be there and stuff if Trump ends up winning in 2024. But look, the last word is just go out and vote, guys. Go out and vote, please, 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 please. And if you are planning to vote Republican, remember that your election is on Wednesday.
Oh, man.
Your election's on Wednesday?
I see what you did there. But no, in all seriousness, guys, please do go out and vote. And as I mentioned at the top here, early voting has begun in New York. And I put on my Facebook page the times. And there's also a link to check your early voting site because it may have changed from last time. Like, for example, last time I was at resorts, my site was no longer at resorts. So, please check and go. If you don't do the early voting, Election Day is Tuesday. It's a week from today. So please do that. Thank you for tuning in. Jay, you'd like to tell everyone where they can find us, right? It's Nuance with Mike Scala and Jay Carter. What are the channels?
Yeah. As Mike said, Nuance with Mike Scala and Jay Carter, you can go to YouTube to find the videos, and then wherever you get your podcasts, the audio will be there. So subscribe to that. It automatically gets pushed to your devices that you listen to podcasts on. If you want to, of course, participate in the discussion, leave comments. YouTube is the place. Drop comments down there. So, hit us up. Let us know what you're feeling.
Sounds good. I guess next week we'll be back as Election Day comes to a close. We'll see what happens, guys. Thank you all. Bye-bye.